A cold, frosty dawn greeted the riders in the AVONTUUR burn camp, but clear skies above promised a day of sparkling riding. Hot and hearty Karoo fare filled the fuel tanks. It was a morning to savor the good things in life, like Vida e Café, which was in high demand. After the torrential rain of Stage 1, muddy and grime-caked bikes were expertly washed, prepared, and returned to their satisfied riders in showroom condition, all part of the full-service offering. The mood was buoyant as riders looked ahead to a day of real Karoo riding. But before we watch them, let's reflect on Stage 1 from Knysna to AVONTUUR, 84 kilometers and just over 2,000 meters of climbing. After Simola Hill and Biffle's Neck, the famed Prince Alfred's Pass was the final challenge. A challenge no less daunting was the prospect of racing through pouring rain and on muddy roads. It was a day that will linger long in the memories of the riders. Simola Hill took no prisoners. Those who lost touch were destined for a seriously long day in the saddle. At the summit, the lead bunch was down to 25 riders as they headed into the lush green Knysna forest. Although a solo race, team tactics were evident, with Beer's specialized teammates Van Zyl and Stedman doing good work early on. Born and raised in Knysna, these are roads the big South African is familiar with. He knows when to push and when to hold back, unlike those who were riding them for the first time. The descents were ridden with a degree of caution, the climbs with power and purpose. Dropping down to the Vlucht, it was 14 riders who prepared for the defining moment of the stage. The 14 kilometers of steady climbing up Prince Alfred's Pass. A roll call of champions: Beers, Postelberger, Seerwald, Dracou, Pelot, Baum, and Hubert, all hoping to stay the distance. 3 did escape after 5 kilometers: Beers, André Frisnecht, and Hugo Dracou. The South African and the French champion rotated on the front, while the Swiss, who was on a hardtail mountain bike with a 100mm suspension, sat at the back all the way to the summit. On the descent to AVONTUUR, Matt Beers took control. His familiar brute strength and power saw to it that Frisnecht and Dracou were unable to get on fighting terms. A tricky technical last kilometer offered the chasers opportunities, but the canny Beers shut the door at every turn. Having sneaked past Dracou on a left-hander, Frisnecht moved into second place, but he could not advance one more place, and Matt Beers wrote his name into gravel burn history as the first stage winner. The ASOS Ember Leaders jersey was a perfect fit for South Africa's preeminent off-road endurance racer. So then just a second between the top 3, and German champion Andreas Seerwald in 7th was less than a minute off the pace after a day of bitterly cold temperatures and burning hot racing. The elite women's batch rolled onto the damp and misty streets of Knysna a minute after the men. Grand Tour stage winners and monument champions on the road alongside the most accomplished gravel racers in the world. African champion Haley Preen and 4-time Olympian Ashley Moolman-Pasio were motivated to win at home. A select group of 8 led through the Knysna forest. French champion Axelle Dubau-Prevot, a 2-time winner on the UCI Gravel World Series, was among them, as were American Melissa Rollins and Clara Koppenberg. By the time they reached the feared final climb, it was down to 4 riders: Preen, Moolman-Pasio, Rollins, and Dubau-Prevot. They tackled the 150-year-old pass full on, each hoping for an opportunity to fly clear. The 2 local stars, familiar with the climb, did huge turns on the front. But that was to be costly for Preen, whose flame was doused halfway up. The same fate befell Rollins, and it was left to Moolman-Pasio and Dubau-Prevot to fight it out. The South African is among the world's best climbers with a record that boasts 48 wins worldwide. Dubau-Prevot is in hot form and stayed with her to the summit, and she took the lead on the rough trail into the finish. Passio could not find the power to catch her and pass her, and Axelle Dubau-Prevot etched her name into history as the first women's stage winner at the Burn Camp in AVONTUUR. Confirmation then of Axelle Dubau-Prevot's stunning year of success that continued on a first day of racing in South Africa, pipping Ashley Moore-Passio by a second. Haley Preen won the sprint for third over Melissa Rollins. Stage 2, and we are well and truly into the Great Karoo. Champagne Gravel will have the riders jockeying for position at high speed early in the 108-kilometer race to WILLOWMORE. The Charlotte at 26 kilometers will see strong riders applying pressure, whittling down the group to a select few by the summit. After the first butt stall at 51 kilometers, riders will need to be alert on a sharp descent. A long drag up to Steenkop follows. The final 28 kilometers of rolling Karoo hills leads them to WILLOWMORE, where a short technical trail could be decisive before the transfer to Graaff-Reinet.
Stage 2, I think 108 kilometers, 1,150 meters of climbing, so not as intense as yesterday, and clear blue skies. What more can we ask for?
So I feel quite okay. Of course, I feel the stage from yesterday, but I had a good rest, good massage, good recovery. From what I heard, the stage will be quite different. Surface should be a bit more smooth.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm a bit afraid not to be attacked the whole day, so yeah, really keep calm and let's see.
The youngsters from the AVONTUUR school, a wonderful opportunity for them to come to the start on the Zondag Farm and the Burn Camp in AVONTUUR to watch these elite riders roll away on stage number 2. Hayley Smith on the front looked highly motivated today after a tough first day, but she is a credentialed rider and would be a key figure through the week. Also in the field there, Mariska Strauss wearing the kit of Toyota just behind Alison Jackson there. Mariska back on the bike, having given birth to her first child 2 years ago. Wonderful to see her racing once again. Surging down towards Uniondale, another local rider, Anita McKenzie from Port Elizabeth, racing towards her hometown later in the week. For now though, just stay in the bunch. Off the asphalt and onto the gravel for the first time today. They would see the smooth stuff again only in the last kilometre and a half as they headed towards WILLOWMORE. From now on, it was going to be gravel and they would start feeling the burn. The sun was very, very welcome, although the air temperature was no more than 11-12 degrees centigrade throughout the morning. Perfect riding conditions for all these top athletes. The key moment came at the Charlotte climb inside the first 30 kilometers. A loose, rough and rocky ascent. Melissa Rollins, the American, was first up but then first off her bike because Haley Preen managed to get past her, the South African and African champion, showing excellent skills, built on a career as not only a cyclist but also as an excellent equestrian athlete. They ran it to the top. And over the top they went with a good margin over the chase pack. An opportunity, perhaps, for the African champion and for her American companion Rollins to open up a gap here. The pair raced against each other on the Lifetime Grand Prix Series, where Preen finished in 9th overall after a very consistent season. And Melissa Rollins, well, an excellent season for her. She finished 3rd overall on the Lifetime Grand Prix Series, dragged herself onto the wheel of Preen It was a long way out, a big gamble if they were hoping to stay away, with a powerful chasing pack behind them. Included in that was the French champion and race leader in the Assos Ochre leader's jersey. Well, Philippe Bacalud had a brief cameo role in the very early stages of the men's race, waves goodbye to the women as they fly past. And that quartet of chasing women, led by the leader Axelle Dubau-Prevot, followed by Olivier Ottiger, and Hayley Smith and Ashley Moorman-Passio were soon to make it 6 riders on the front through this champagne gravel. Spectacular conditions for the riders to enjoy today. A fast 108 kilometers to WILLOWMORE. The 6 riders rode consistently, not all working equally, but enough to get a reasonable gap on the chasers. But they were aware there were some powerhouses still trying to catch them. Axelle Dubau-Prevot into South African territory for the first time this week, and my word, as she made her presence felt. She has been in fantastic form, a couple of wins in the UCI Gravel Series this year, and her last big race prior to coming to South Africa was victory in the French Championship, which she won alongside her partner Hugo Dresho. In fact, they crossed the line within seconds of each other, with the women having started just ahead of the men. So the group swelled to 8 riders. Joining this group were the American champion Lawrence Stevens and Whitney Allison, making it an 8-rider group. Allison just hunting for a nice wheel as they went over the Red Bull kilometer start line. An initiative that perhaps these riders won't be too involved in for the time being. They're focused purely on the general classification over the 7 days. An opportunity for amateurs later in the day to qualify for the night burn, which will take place at Blauwater in a couple of days' time. Ashley Moorman-Passio, absolute model of consistency on the front. Just behind her, the race leader. Then it's Melissa Rollins, Hayley Smith, Olivier Ottiger, Lawrence Stevens in the Stars and Stripes, the American champion, and Whitney Allison and Hayley Preen, unusually for the African champion, sitting on the back of the group at this stage, perhaps looking down at her headset and just measuring her efforts. Stevens just also recently crowned for the 3rd year in a row the champion of the United States. As this road started to tilt upwards as they closed towards WILLOWMORE, it was Whitney Allison who started to pedal squares. The 7 riders ahead of her moved steadily away as she fought the demons and fought the gravel to try and stay in contact. It wasn't to be for the American, whose husband is also in the race, as she dropped further back. Axelle Dubau-Prevot sitting on the wheel of who she believes was the strongest rider on day 1 and perhaps in the race all told, Ashley Moorman-Passio, although the results tell us a different story, because the Frenchwoman has brought wonderful gravel form to the Great Karoo this week. The typical long, broad, open, exposed road into the wind they went. Moorman-Passio doing so much work on the frontier, perhaps to her detriment, as they closed in on what would be a critical phase in this race, the last turn towards WILLOWMORE, where they would have to tackle some really difficult, sketchy trail. Into the farm gate they went. First Melissa Rollins, then Hayley Preen. They crossed the railway line in the same order. Then Hayley Smith and Dubau-Prevot. A bit of a gap now. Lawrence Stevens losing the wheel of the Frenchwoman. And with her, it is Ashley Moorman-Passio. Onto the tar road, and it looked for all the money as the Melissa Rollins was heading to victory on stage 2 of the Nedbank gravel burn. But an almighty surge coming from the Frenchwoman, Axelle Dubau-Prevot, and she dragged herself onto the back wheel of Rollins and blasted past and showed her incredible turn of speed and power as she powered to victory on stage 2 at the Nedbank gravel burn. Second Rollins, and third was Hayley Smith. The elite men rolled away from AVONTUUR and the Zondag Farm. Taming the Great Karoo is what the Nedbank Gravel Burn is all about. And the Charlotte is a brutal challenge for every single rider coming up there, and it provided a monstrous challenge for all the riders. The very best in the world were off their bikes as they scrambled up here, as were the amateurs after them, and it tested every rider. It was a scramble in the dust left behind here, and you would have a very, very long day in making it back to the front of the race. Riders picked their lines. It was tricky with riders all over the place, one or two just toppling over as the riders ahead of them stopped. At the top of the climb, Lucas Baum, who'd initiated the move about a kilometre short of the first steep ramps, managed to hold on and go through the top as the leader. Matthew Beers was on his wheel, and soon enough, Simon Pelot, the powerful Swiss rider, had joined these two riders, and this was the lead trio for much of the day. In fact, for the entire day from after the Charlotte. Beers defending his OK Leaders jersey on his wheel, the immensely powerful Lucas Baum, whose credentials include a win at the Cape Epic. Beers, of course, a multiple winner of that event and of just about every stage race in South Africa over the years. He has a prodigious engine, and he was using it to good effect here. The chase group had formed. Griffin Easter from the United States was in the company of Marco Hubert and his Imbuka Chemchamp teammate Tristan Norkier. Hubert and Norkier finished on the podium in third place at the Cape Epic earlier this year, and that gave them immense confidence. Hubert went on to win the South African National Championships on the gravels in Karkloof earlier this year, hence his national champion's jersey. A former national champion, in fact, the inaugural national gravel champion, Matthew Beers, has gone on to bigger and greater things in races, seldom in South Africa on domestic races, but he's brought his great form from the United States to South Africa here on the Nedbank Gravel Burn. It's a race he could not resist, and one that he is determined to become the first winner of. And he's making a very, very good start to that. At the back of the chase bench, Martin Fryer, one of two Namibians in the elite field, the other being the national champion Alex Miller, who was also in that group. But they were making little impact on the lead group of Beers, Pelot and Baum. They were closing in on a flat measured kilometre, the start of the Red Bull kilometre, an initiative that is going to spark great interest and excitement on the end of stage number 4 at Blauwater with the night burn, when amateurs who would have qualified through today's timings at the Red Bull kilometre will have the opportunity to race on a handicap type system against none other than Tom Pidcock. A welcome sight of the dust. These riders powered on through home farms, and landowners and farmers in the Great Karoo opened their gates and their hearts to welcome the Nedbank Gravel Burn in its inaugural year. Marco Hubert looking to make time on Ugo Dreschu and, of course, Andri Frischnecht. Frischnecht second overall after stage 1, Dreschu in third place. Both were suffering, and as a result, Marco Hubert, Tristan Norkier, Griffin Easter, those who were within a couple of seconds of the top 3 were keen to press home an advantage in the break. Hubert pushing on hard. He's a man who never gives up. He loves to race hard. He's racing towards his hometown. He was born and raised in Port Elizabeth, no more than an hour from the finish at Shamwari Private Game Reserve. But his efforts to escape came to naught. He was hunted down and hauled in by the group. All of that did have very little impact on the lead group, whose lead was swelling out to over 2 minutes. Regular rotations on the front of the group between Baum, Beers and Pelot ensured that they kept a steady tempo and shared the workload all the way through this mighty long break. They got together after 40 kilometers and were together after another 40 as they went through the second Padstal and headed towards the final ascent at Speenkop and into WILLOWMORE. Totally committed to their task, which was just stay clear of the followers. A study in teamwork. It's a solo race, but in these situations, it's all about working together, encouraging each other, keeping each other in the group. One falls back, it becomes much harder for the other two to complete the job. Into the final drag to the line, and Simon Pelot had slipped out briefly on the little trail that led them onto the tar road, and it was down to a two-rider sprint, Lucas Baum and Matt Beers. These two powered towards the line, Beers on the back wheel of Baum, and then he applied his familiar surgical touch and powered ahead and stormed to victory in WILLOWMORE to take stage number 2 in a row for the man in the ASOS leaders jersey. Victory on stage number 2 to Matt Beers to consolidate his overall lead. Bowen took second place and Simon Pelot in third. Matthew Beers will wear the ASOS Oka leaders jersey for a second day in a row, 5 hours 49:37. But just on his heels now, Simon Pelot, the Swiss rider, had an excellent day today to take second place. Lucas Baum is on his heels. Hugo Drescho's dropped down to fourth place. Tristan Nokia up into fifth place. Mathieu de Marquis. The big loser today, though, was Andrei Frischneck, who dropped from second to 13th place. 10th place occupied by Nokia's partner and teammate, the South African champion, Marco Hubert. It's building up beautifully. 6 minutes or so between the top 10. Well, the race is about so much more than all the leaders and the professionals. Of course, the heart and soul of the event are the amateurs and the spectators and the school children in the various towns. There are not many opportunities to see these riders, so when it arrived in WILLOWMORE, which dates back to the 1860s and is still a bustling, thriving community servicing the farmlands here, the school children and youngsters were out on force to welcome the Nedbank gravel burn to this wonderful, quaint and iconic Karoo town. The amateurs got heroes welcome as they rolled into the finish line all afternoon. The commitment, the resolve, the resilience shown by those who spend upwards of twice as long as the professionals out on the roads was welcomed by the local community. Matt Beers, top of the podium once again, 2 out of 2. Beers, a second ahead of Baum with Pelot in third place. Narsen and Hubert complete the top 5. Top of the podium once again, 2 in a row for Axelle Dubau-Prevot, 3:41.45. Same time as Melissa Rollins. Hayley Smith third. The top 5 separated by just 21 seconds. So the riders arrived in WILLOWMORE and would have an opportunity to recover, to refuel, and then to relax just for a moment before heading away to Graaff-Reinet. The jewel of the Karoo awaited these riders as they would take on stage 3 from that town. But not before Griffin Easter took on every cyclist's habit, a wonderful VDE coffee. In stark contrast to 24 hours earlier when they arrived in cold and rain and endured a tough night in the cold at AVONTUUR. This stage ended in bright, glorious sunshine. Plenty to talk about in the women's race and in the men's race. Graaff-Reinet awaits. The jewel of the Karoo is our next port of call on the inaugural Nedbank gravel burn. It is an absolute delight. Broad open plains and an absolute nirvana for gravel races as the roads snake around these conical mountains and towers in the Karoo and takes them on a journey that'll be testing as they head towards Blauwater Camp and the remote space that these riders will occupy when they'll come across game and wildlife like they've never been seen before on the bike. The Nedbank Gravel Burn journey continues. 2 days down, 5 to go. Graafrenet to Blaarwater Farm awaits.